Oh, can I have that? I'm just such a, I was just telling someone this. When I was a boy, my mom had this thing she always said to me. She would say, Francis, I swear if your head was not attached, you would forget it. I inherited my oldest brother's Schwinn bicycle, those really cool ones. This was the purple one, the Stingray. The first time I took it to school, I locked it up, but I forgot I rode it to school. And I came home. And when I went back, somebody had cut the lock, never saw that bicycle again. So it was somewhere in that town of 6,000 people, but I never saw it again. So if you're new here, this is what I forgot. We'd love it if you would fill out one of these connection cards that you see on the seats. It just helps us. We're not going to come knock on your door. It just helps us put your name and face together. And it gives me the chance to just send you a text or an email and say, hey, it was great to have you at LifeSpring. We want you to feel welcome. We know if you're here for the first time, you might just be kind of checking things out, but we want you to know that there's a place for you in our beautiful community and that you are very welcome here. So, and you can either drop that in the box or after service, if you take that card out to our Newcomer Connect area by the fireplace, somebody would love to chat with you, and they have a special little gift for you. But you don't get the gift if you drop it in the box. You have to go to the fireplace. So, anyway. There are some stanzas of the 42nd Psalm in the Old Testament that I find particularly soulish, if I can put it that way. And I just want to read them to you. As the deer pants for the streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night, while they continually say to me, where is your God? When I remember these things, I pour out my soul within me. For I used to go with the multitude. I went up with them to the house of God with the voice of joy and praise, with a multitude that kept a pilgrim feast. And then a few verses later, deep calls unto deep in the roar of your waterfalls. All your waves and breakers have gone over me. The Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and in the night his song shall be with me, a prayer to the God of my life. That line is almost haunting to me. Deep calls unto deep. All your waves and your breakers have gone over me. The series we're beginning this morning and we'll be doing for the next few weeks is built around a question. Why am I still a Christian? And every sermon's going to be kind of a different answer to that question. And the title of my sermon this morning is, I'm still a Christian because deep calls unto deep. If you've been around Christianity or churches for any length of time, years maybe, or if you are aware of the proliferation of conversation about Christians and churches in the broader culture, we see articles in publications now, publications that never used to talk about Christianity, publications like the Washington Post and the Atlantic Monthly and MSNBC, Morning Joe on MSNBC, who is a Christian, by the way, Joe Scarborough, and a million YouTubers are all talking about Christians all of a sudden and about Christianity. And if you're at all tuned into all of that, the rise in that conversation, then you know that the state, as far as the state of Christian faith in Western culture, we are living in really interesting times. And one of the consequences of the times that we are in is that many people are coming to the place where they are saying that they are simply done with Christ or with Christianity or with church. In his book, When Everything is on Fire, Brian Zahnd talks about how for many people, when they see Christianity coming to be characterized by so many undesirable things, they just feel like the only thing to do is let the house burn down and walk away. Like, if this is what Christianity is, just walk away. But I don't feel that way. And it's not just because I'm a pastor. There are deeper reasons. It's why I thought of doing this series, to be honest. There are deeper reasons why I'm still a Christian. There are deeper reasons why I don't abandon my faith. I have, by the way, been on what I would call a heartfelt journey with Christ for over 40 years in my life. A good long time, ever since the evening when I was 15, when I knelt by a lake in southern Wisconsin and talked to Jesus for the first time, and what I told him was, I'll give you a try. Literally, that was my prayer. Okay, I'll give you a try. 4+ decades is a long time to point your life in one direction and say, Jesus Christ is my true north. But today, even people who, like me, have sought to live the Christian journey for decades are feeling disillusioned. And there are several reasons for that. They aren't all the same, but they all seem to have come into greater visibility and focus in, I would say, the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm just going to share, there are more than this, but I'm going to share briefly. It's not really my sermon, but I just want to, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll just share with you 4 of those reasons very briefly. A massive one is just Christians trying to figure out their relationship to politics, and ways that's gone good and some ways that it's gone very, very badly. And a lot of people are seeing how Christians are functioning in the political sphere and how they think Jesus looks at America or the political agenda. And a lot of Christians are looking at that and they're saying, if that's what Christians are going to be known for in our culture, well, then I don't know if I want to be known as a Christian, or I don't know if I am that kind of Christian. A second reason is just the increasing frustration many people of faith have with the judgmentalism of their fellow Christians. There just seems like we somehow, I think it snuck up on Christians, this thing where we're just trying to live the way we thought God wanted us to live, and we were separating out in our minds the good and the bad, and the good people and the bad people, and then somehow before we realized it, a lot of us as Christians landed in this place where we had decided that we were the arbiters of everything for God in terms of who was good, who was bad, what's acceptable, what's not, all those kinds of things. And so a lot of Christians are just saying, I don't want to be a part of something that just thinks our whole job is like policing everybody. A third reason people are disillusioned is what feels like the endless parade of pastors and church leaders, often in what seem like the largest and most successful churches, who have been disgraced because they have been shown to be power-hungry narcissists or greedy or not living by the sexual ethic that they themselves have preached. And with this, I would say that many people are tired of seeing the church run like a big business. There was a time in America where all of us as Christians just thought the greatest thing in the world would be if every church was 20,000 people. I don't know what you think today. I don't think that anymore. A fourth reason, which this one you might not be as personally aware of, but you might be. But don't minimize it if you're not aware of it. It's just the increasing necessity many people are feeling to ask questions about the theology they've been taught, the way they've been taught about Christianity. For a long time, most Christians were content to accept what they were taught. If the preacher said, hey, I got a Bible verse for that, and they said, well, that must be the way it is then. But now more people of faith are asking, people are saying, well, this is the way it is, and that's what the Bible says, and more people of faith now are saying, yes, but does it sound like what Jesus would say? I know you have a verse for it, right? I love something Brian Zahn says. He says, you never get to go to Jesus with your Bible and say, yeah, but Jesus, I got a verse. You might get laughed at. They're saying, yes, but does it sound like what Jesus would say or what Jesus would do or how the God Jesus reveals would be? Does it seem like that? And as I describe these 4 reasons people are feeling frustrated or disillusioned, many of you in this room can identify with one or more of those. For some of you, that's why you're at LifeSpring Church. And then there's sometimes the added frustration that as these questions arise, Christian leaders often kind of shut the questions down. They often project the idea that there's one Christian position on politics, one Christian position on every theological question, one Christian position on how we see every group of people, and only one answer on every point of biblical interpretation. And what we're seeing is an increasing number of people of faith, and I would put myself in this camp, who have been saying, no, we will talk about these questions. We're not going to be shut down anymore and say we can't have conversation about important topics. But also many people in all that frustration are just saying, forget it. let the house burn down. I'm done with Christianity. And I'm not here this morning to talk about the particularities of the various questions people are wrestling with, like those things I just listed that are leading to this rise in disillusionment. What I will say, though, is that one very big thing I've learned across the decades of my own faith journey is simply this: the need to be a continual and humble learner. That was not naturally inherent in the churches and kind of Christianity, I guess, that I was involved in mostly in my early adult years. Too much modern Christianity has not valued continual learning, has not valued the humility that I hear in Paul's words in 1 Corinthians 8:2, when he says, the person who thinks he knows everything should take heed, for he does not yet know as he ought. First time that really sunk in, I was like, oh, maybe I don't know everything yet as I ought. The great evangelical scholar Mark Knoll wrote decades ago that the scandal of the evangelical mind is that there isn't one. And I don't mean to be pejorative with that, truly. He was saying, in particular with conservative Christianity, that we have not valued the humility of learning and the possibility that we don't yet see everything in the best way that we might see various things. So we should have been asking many questions about so many things, but with our Bibles in our hands, we were told that we had all the answers, had landed on all the right Christian positions, and so questions weren't really needed. The best I can tell, and this will bring some memories back for you, Pastor Larry, the best I can tell, the foment of questions currently unfolding in the church really started as a little stream about 25 years ago when a pastor named Brian McLaren began to sense that there were cracks appearing in the fabric of modern Christianity. A few of us around here were reading his early books like A Generous Orthodoxy, A New Kind of Christian. McLaren and others gave rise to what came to be known as the emerging church, which seemed to be a thing for a decade or so, but then it kind of fizzled out because it was mostly a critique of certain Christian viewpoints, but it wasn't very specific at that stage about, well, what does a better Christianity look like? The Christian thinker Dallas Willard summed it up well when he was asked what would become of the emerging church. And he said, a reaction against the modern church is not a gospel. He was saying there's a legitimate critique against the modern church and modern Christianity, but that doesn't constitute a better version of the good news. So there are lots of questions today, but for me a huge question is, but what is the gospel? Or maybe I think a more real way to even ask it would be this: what is the center? What is this thing that Jesus came to bring to us? Because in a time of questions and frustrations, if you don't have the center to hold on to, the winds can toss you pretty far. And I think that's kind of what's happening to a lot of people who are just saying, I'm done. Let me use my relationship with Linda as an analogy. We will be married. She might toss me real far. I don't know.
Pastor Fran, you can't sit over her.
Are you sure, Chris? Linda and I will be married 42 years at the end of this month. And like every couple, or most couples, we've had some ups and some downs. But I have always believed that at the center of our relationship, there is something of real substance. That there's something good, something beautiful, something God graced us to glimpse with each other early on that is worth working through whatever questions or struggles arise, because in this relationship that we share, this beautiful relationship, there is a wholeness and a joy that's incomparable. And so even in our tough times, even in the times of struggles and questions, I've known there was this beautiful center there with Linda Lehman that I didn't want to walk away from. Now, you all know that I do engage all these questions that are swirling around today. I have opinions on Christians and politics and cultural issues and many of the theological questions that people are wrestling with these days. But those are neither the reason I'm a Christian nor a reason to stop being a Christian. They're just the questions that are swirling around right now at this time that we all kind of have to navigate as Christians. I want to tell you this morning that first and foremost, we'll talk about some other reasons over the weeks ahead, but I want to tell you that this morning, first and foremost, I am a Christian because at the center of my relationship with Jesus, there is something of real substance, something good, something beautiful, something that is worth working through whatever questions or struggles arise, because there is a wholeness and a joy in the center of my relationship with Jesus that is incomparable. I've talked about this once or twice before, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the great Russian thinker and novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky has a story, a famous story called The Grand Inquisitor. And in the story of the Grand Inquisitor, it's very interesting, Christ appears on the streets of Madrid, Spain, during the height of the Spanish Inquisition, at a time when the church is drunk on its own power and literally forcing people to faith at the point of the sword. And the scene opens in the Grand Inquisitor where Christ appears on the streets, and there's a funeral procession coming up to the steps of the cathedral there in Madrid, and it's a little girl who has died, and Jesus walks up and he raises her from the dead. And slowly the crowd begins to dawn on them who is in their midst. And people are just in awe, like it's him. It's like God hasn't abandoned us, he's really here. And Christ is promptly arrested by the leaders of the Inquisition and taken to a dungeon prison cell. And that night, the Grand Inquisitor, he appears as an old man, but he's a thinly veiled personification of the Satan. And he comes to the prison cell that night to interrogate Christ. And in that prison cell, he tells Christ that free will and love are too great a burden for human beings. And so what human beings need is they just need to be treated like slaves, which of course is what the church was doing to them. They just need to be treated like slaves and told what to do, and that's what they really want. What human beings really want is they want to be free of the burden of free will and choosing and of trying to become good and of trying to figure out love. And so he's basically, he brings up the temptations in the desert. He takes Jesus back to that time because they were both there. And he's basically saying, like, your way, God, is never going to work. You're never going to get these people's hearts. It's too hard. So they just need to be slaves. They need to be peons. You got to force them and tell them. And through the whole interrogation, it's really interesting. Christ never says a word. Although it's kind of weird. At the end, when you read it, it kind of catches you by surprise because it feels like a conversation, and yet Christ has not spoken. Let me read you the end of the story. When the inquisitor fell silent, he waited for some time for his prisoner to reply, Christ. His silence weighed on him. He had seen how his captive listened to him all the while intently and calmly, looking him straight in the eye and apparently not wishing to contradict anything. The old man would have liked him to say something, even something bitter, terrible. But suddenly he approaches the old man in silence and gently kisses him on the lips, gently kisses him on his bloodless 90-year-old lips. And that is the whole answer. The old man shudders. Something stirs at the corners of his mouth. He walks to the door, opens it, and says to Christ, "Go out and do not come again. Do not come at all. Never, never." And he lets him out into the dark squares of the city. The prisoner goes away, and the old man, the kiss burns in his heart, but the old man holds to his former idea. Now, what's really fascinating is that this little story, the Grand Inquisitor, is actually a story being told within a larger story, within a novel. The Dostoevsky novel is called The Brothers Karamazov. And the way this story of the Grand Inquisitor appears within the novel is that Ivan Karamazov is trying to convince his brother Aloysia, who has this heartfelt relationship with Jesus, to give it up, that it's pointless, that Christianity is not true, and that it's not worth following. And so Ivan tells Aloysia this story to convince Aloysia to give up his heartfelt faith in Christ. In other words, Ivan's argument is, it will never work. Free will and love are too great and goodness, they're too great a burden for human beings. God's way will never work. If there is a God, forget about it. Give it up. Walk away from it. Ivan is convinced that the story will show Aloysia the folly of Christianity and deal the death blow to his faith. After telling the story, Ivan explains to his brother that if you get rid of Christ, he basically says, here's the beauty of it. If you get rid of Christ, everything is permitted. Right? And he says to Aloysia, I won't give that up. In other words, I want the life where everything is permitted, where I don't have to condition my life to God, to anything, right? He says, I won't give that up. And he says to Aloysia, and what then? Will you renounce me for that? He's daring his brother in the name of Christ to reject him because he won't bow down to Christ. He's saying to his brother Aloysia, will you judge me? Will you reject me because I won't believe and live as you do? And this is the next line Dostoevsky writes. And with that, Aloysia stood up, went over to him, to Ivan, in silence, and gently kissed him on the lips. That's the answer. That's the center. That at the center of this belief that bursts into visibility in the person of Jesus is a beauty, a beautiful love that is bigger than all wounds, that's bigger than all angers, that's bigger than all arguments over ideology, many of which we are having today and need to have. The answer to all things is this beautiful love. We ask a question around here as we seek a good and whole understanding of this faith. We ask, does it look like Jesus? Does it sound like Jesus? I said that the answer to all things is this beautiful love. I want you to listen to Jesus as he sits with his friends around the Passover table just hours before he's going to be arrested. It's in John chapter 14. He says to his friends, I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. A little while longer and the world will not see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you will live also. At that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. He who has my commandments and keeps them, he's the one who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. And Judas, not Judas Iscariot, said to him, Lord, how is it that you will manifest yourself to us and not to the world? Jesus answered and said to him, if anyone loves me, he will follow my word, my teachings. And my Father will love him. Listen to this. And we will come to him and we will make our home with him. How do you feel about mystery? I'm just going to let you sit with that for a minute. Because for people who have been taught to just survive in life and to plod through every day and just to deal with the facts and the material world, we are in deep mystery here with Jesus. If you love me, my Father and I, we're going to come to you. We're going to make our home with you. You're going to know that I'm in the Father, Father's in me, we're in you. That the Creator loved you so much that having absorbed and vanquished all your darkness at the cross, He now invites you to return to goodness and love. And the way, this is what Jesus is saying, and the way that this return to goodness and love, this return to your true humanity, the way that this is going to happen is that we're going to come live in you. We live in this day where it's so tempting, even for me, because there are so many ideological questions being talked about. It's so tempting to make it all that, right? They'll know we are Christians by our positions. Oh, that's not how the song goes, is it? It's so tempting. But Jesus says the way this is going to happen is that we're going to come and we're going to live in you. Because whether you know it or not, the deep in you has always been searching for the deep in Him, for the center, for this beautiful love. And this is the beautiful love that's going to heal us, that's going to bring us back to our true selves, that's going to give us a heart that sees all human beings, and that teaches us the way of love. Now you tell me what other store I'm going to find this in, because where I found it down at the Jesus store. I started finding it when I was 15 years old. I started finding this beautiful love. Now I've had some side roads. Some were ones that other people dragged me on. Some were ones I ran down mostly under my own power. But this center of who God is, this God of beautiful love, and of who and what I really am, this is what Jesus brings. I'm still a Christian because this beautiful love, we have a word for this mystery. We call it communion. Not just this communion, though you should think of it when you come to this communion. Communion is union. I talked about this a few weeks ago. It's the shared life, when your life is so shared with someone that it kind of sloshes back and forth like the water in the sand. And Jesus says, we're going to come and we're going to live in you. And your spirit and my spirit, they're going to be sloshing around together. And so, I'm still a Christian because this beautiful love, this restoring communion, I have found in this journey with Jesus, the good and beautiful God. Paul says in his little Colossian letter that humans lost track of this great mystery for a long time. He uses phrases like ages past. But he says that now this mystery has been made known again in Jesus. And he says a really amazing thing there in that little letter. He says he wants to succinctly tell you what the mystery is. So he says, and this is what the mystery is, this mystery that was kind of human beings lost track of for so long. But he says, now it's been revealed in Jesus. And he says, and here's what the mystery is. The mystery is Christ in you. I just want to go like, you mean in me? Not like as a belief system. No, it's like, it's Christ in you, Chuck, in you. It's Christ in you, Kim. The center of your being. Tom, it's Christ in you. It's Christ in you. Ron, it's Christ in you. Roger, it's Christ in you. And then he says this, it's Christ in you, and he wants to tell you what the implication of it is. He says, it's Christ in you, which is the hope of you being restored to all this gloriousness, to this beautiful goodness and love. I am a long way from arriving as a human being and as a follower of Jesus. But I was thinking again this week how I'm not the person I used to be. I'm not the person yet that I'm going to be, but I'm not the person I used to be. And it's because at the center of this experience I've had with Jesus, there is this beautiful love that keeps transforming me. And that's reason number one, above all the other reasons, why I'm still a Christian, why I'm still on this road with him.